Have you ever heard of a half-human, half-angel race that once existed on Earth? A race with extraordinary strength, gigantic height, and superior intelligence. They are the Nephilim, offspring of the union between sons of God and daughters of men. A mysterious race whose existence changed human history and may have been one of the main reasons leading to the Great Flood. Imagine a world where the boundary between heaven and earth was blurred, where beings from the divine realm entered the human world and created a new race, powerful, terrifying, and completely different. What happens when angelic power combines with human nature? What is the result when divine boundaries are broken? And why did God decide to wipe out all of humanity, except for Noah's family, in a terrible flood? In today's video, we will explore together one of the greatest mysteries recorded in the Bible and other ancient texts. We will learn about the origin of the Nephilim, hybrid creatures between angels and humans. We will discover their extraordinary characteristics and abilities, their role in leading to the Great Flood, and the evidence and relics they may have left on Earth. The story of the Nephilim is not just an ancient legend, it is a warning about the consequences of crossing divine boundaries, about the danger of pride and uncontrolled power. This is a story about how God deals with corruption and sin, but also a story about mercy and hope through the salvation of Noah and his family. Before we dive deeper into this topic, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content. If you believe these ancient mysteries deserve to be explored and shared, leave a comment below with your thoughts about the Nephilim. Do you believe in their existence? Who do you think they were and why did they appear on Earth? Let's begin our journey to explore one of the greatest mysteries of human history, the story of the Nephilim, the hybrid race between angels and humans, and their role in the Great Flood event that permanently changed the face of the earth. As we delve deeper into the mystery of the Nephilim, we must begin with their origins, a story filled with mystery and controversy recorded in humanity's most ancient texts. Genesis 6:1-4 records. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The giants mentioned in this biblical passage are the Nephilim, offspring of the union between sons of God and daughters of men. But who exactly were these sons of God? This is a question that has caused debate among scholars and theologians for thousands of years. In ancient Hebrew, the term Nephilim derives from the verb naphal, meaning to fall or to come down. This has led to a popular theory that the Nephilim were children of fallen angels, angels who rebelled against God and were cast out of heaven. The Book of Enoch, an ancient text not included in the Standard Bible but respected by many early Jews and Christians, expands on this story. According to the Book of Enoch, a group of angels called the Watchers were seduced by the beauty of earthly women. They swore to each other, under the leadership of Semjaza, that they would descend to earth and take these women as wives. About 200 angels did this, and they not only married earthly women but also taught humanity forbidden knowledge, from the art of war, weapon making to magic, astronomy and cosmetics. The result of this union was the Nephilim, hybrid creatures between angels and humans with strength and size far exceeding normal humans. The Book of Enoch describes them as 300 cubits tall, about 135 meters, although this figure may be symbolic rather than literal. They consumed all the food that humans could produce, and when food was insufficient, they began to eat humans and drink their blood. However, not all scholars agree with this theory. Some suggest that the sons of God were not angels but descendants of Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve, who was considered the beginning of a godly lineage. According to this view, the daughters of men were descendants of Cain, who killed his brother and was cursed by God. The marriage between these two lineages defiled the godly blood of Seth and led to humanity's corruption. Another theory suggests that the sons of God might have been kings or rulers of ancient times who claimed to be divine and abused their power to take any woman they wanted. This aligns with how kings in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt often claimed to be sons of gods. Whichever theory is correct, it's clear that the appearance of the Nephilim marked a turning point in human history. The Bible describes this period as one of extreme corruption and violence. Genesis 6-5 states, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." The presence of the Nephilim and their influence on humanity contributed to this corruption. They are described as the heroes of old, men of renown, perhaps the origin of many legends about gods and heroes in various cultures around the world. Interestingly, many ancient cultures have similar legends about beings that were half divine and half human. In Greek mythology, we have demigods, children of gods and mortals. In Sumerian mythology, we have Gilgamesh, described as 2/3 god and 1/3 human. In Norse mythology, we have the Jotnar, often translated as giants. Do these similarities suggest that all these legends share a common origin? Could they reflect a collective memory of the Nephilim, half angel and half human beings who once lived on earth? Whatever the case, the presence of the Nephilim led to one of God's most important decisions in the Bible, the decision to wipe out most of humanity through the Great Flood. Genesis 6-7 records, "So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them." Only Noah and his family, described as righteous and blameless in his generation, were saved from the flood. This raises an interesting question. Was one of the reasons Noah was chosen because he was not contaminated by Nephilim blood? The appearance of the Nephilim is a warning about the consequences of crossing divine boundaries, about the danger of humans trying to become like gods, and about how God deals with corruption and sin. It's a story about pride, rebellion, and the consequences of going against God's will. But the story of the Nephilim doesn't end with the Great Flood. Surprisingly, the Bible mentions their presence after the flood, in the time of Moses and Joshua. This raises another question. How could the Nephilim exist after the flood? Did some of them survive, or did the sons of God once again unite with the daughters of men after the flood? These are questions we will explore in the next section as we learn about the characteristics and abilities of the Nephilim and their role in the Great Flood. The Bible describes the Nephilim as giants and the heroes of old, men of renown. But what does this really mean? Imagine a being with height far exceeding normal humans, with strength capable of lifting rocks that dozens of ordinary people couldn't move. Ancient texts outside the Bible, like the Book of Enoch, describe them as 300 cubits tall, equivalent to about 135 meters. Although this figure may be symbolic rather than literal, it reflects the belief that Nephilim were of gigantic size compared to the people of that time. Interestingly, many cultures around the world have legends about giants living in the early period of human history. From the Greeks with their titans, the Norse with their Jotnar, to the Maya and Aztec with their giant gods, it seems that the memory of a race superior in size has been deeply imprinted in humanity's collective consciousness. But is there actually evidence for the existence of these giant beings? Over the decades, there have been reports of discovering giant human skeletons around the world, from North America to the Middle East, from Europe to South America. Many believe these could be relics of the Nephilim. However, mainstream science typically dismisses these findings, claiming they are hoaxes, misunderstandings, or animal bones that were misidentified. Nevertheless, stories about giant skeletons persist. In the 1800s, many American newspapers reported discoveries of human skeletons ranging from 2.5 to 3.5 meters tall. These discoveries often occurred in Native American mounds. What happened to these skeletons? Many believe they were collected by organizations like the Smithsonian and then disappeared from public records, a claim that the Smithsonian firmly denies. Beyond their gigantic size, the Nephilim were also believed to possess superior strength. As hybrids between angels and humans, they combined the supernatural strength of their fathers with the physical form of their mothers. The Book of Enoch describes them as capable of lifting enormous rocks, defeating entire armies, and even moving mountains. While these descriptions may be exaggerations, they reflect the belief that Nephilim possessed strength far beyond normal humans. But physical strength was only one aspect of the Nephilim's abilities. As children of the sons of God, they were believed to inherit knowledge and intelligence from their fathers. According to the Book of Enoch, the fallen angels taught humans many skills and knowledge they weren't ready to grasp, from the art of war, weapon making, astronomy, to magic and spells. The Nephilim, with their superior intelligence, became rulers, kings, and heroes in the ancient world. They were worshipped as living gods, and many believe that legends about gods and goddesses in various cultures may originate from memories of the Nephilim. Another notable aspect of the Nephilim was their longevity. If they inherited part of the immortal nature of their fathers, they may have lived much longer than normal humans. This could explain why many kings and heroes in ancient legends were said to live hundreds, even thousands of years. However, with all their strength and abilities, the Nephilim also carried a deep darkness within them. The Book of Enoch describes them as greedy and violent creatures, consuming all the food that humans could produce, and when that wasn't enough, they began to eat humans and drink their blood. They became oppressors, using their strength and knowledge to dominate and control. The presence of the Nephilim transformed pre-flood society in profound and disturbing ways. With their superior strength and intelligence, they quickly became rulers and leaders. They were worshipped as living gods, and many believe that the pyramids and other ancient architectural works could be the legacy of the Nephilim era. But their rule was not a time of peace and prosperity. The Bible describes the period before the flood as a time of extreme violence and corruption. Genesis 6:5 says, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." The Nephilim, with their power and influence, contributed to this corruption. They used their knowledge and abilities not to elevate humanity, but to satisfy their own desires and ambitions. They taught humans skills and knowledge they weren't ready to grasp, leading to abuse and chaos. Some scholars believe that the presence of the Nephilim was one of the main reasons leading to God's decision to send the flood. The combination between angels and humans created a race not part of God's original plan, and their presence contaminated the bloodline of humanity. This raises an interesting question. Was one of the reasons Noah was chosen because he was not contaminated by Nephilim blood? The Bible describes Noah as righteous and blameless in his generation, Genesis 6-9. Some scholars interpret this as referring not only to Noah's moral character but also to his genetic purity. He did not carry Nephilim blood. In any case, the presence of the Nephilim has left an indelible mark on human history and culture. From unexplained ancient architectural works to legends about gods and heroes, their traces still exist today. Numbers 13:33 records the report of the Israelites sent to scout the Promised Land. "We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." This raises another question. How could the Nephilim exist after the flood? Did some of them survive, or did the sons of God once again unite with the daughters of men after the flood? Some scholars suggest that perhaps some Nephilim survived the flood by hiding in high caves or areas the floodwaters couldn't reach. Others believe that the fallen angels continued to mate with earthly women after the flood, creating a new generation of Nephilim. Whatever the explanation, the presence of Nephilim after the flood shows that the battle between good and evil, between God's plan and Satan's rebellion, continues to unfold. As we look back at the story of the Nephilim, we see a warning about the consequences of crossing divine boundaries, about the danger of pride and uncontrolled power. It's a story about how God deals with corruption and sin, but also a story about mercy and hope through the salvation of Noah and his family. Now that we have explored the origins and extraordinary characteristics of the Nephilim, we must face a frightening truth. Their presence led to one of the most horrific events in human history, the Great Flood. The world before the Great Flood was a world we can hardly imagine. A world where the boundary between heaven and earth had been blurred, where the sons of God had united with the daughters of men, creating a powerful and terrifying hybrid race. But this was also a world sinking into sin and corruption. Genesis 6-5 describes, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." This is not a mild statement. The Bible doesn't say that humans sometimes did evil, or even frequently did evil. It says that every thought in their hearts was only evil all the time. This is a comprehensive and radical corruption. The Nephilim, with their power and influence, played an important role in this corruption. The Book of Enoch describes them as greedy and violent creatures, not only consuming all the food that humans could produce, but also beginning to eat humans when food was insufficient. They taught humans skills and knowledge they weren't ready to grasp, from the art of war, weapon making, to magic and spells. Imagine a world where giant, powerful beings, many times stronger than normal humans, walked among us. A world where violence and depravity were everyday occurrences. a world where divine knowledge was abused for selfish and evil purposes. This is the world that God looked down upon and felt grief to the depths of his heart. Genesis 6:6-7 records, "The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them." This is one of the most frightening passages in the Bible. God, the creator of the universe, who had looked at everything he created and saw that it was very good, now regretted and was deeply troubled for having created humans. The corruption of humanity had reached the point where God decided to wipe out most of his creation and start over. But why? Why would God make such an extreme decision? Many scholars believe that the presence of the Nephilim was one of the main reasons. The union between angels and humans had created a race not part of God's original plan, and their presence had contaminated the bloodline of humanity. Some scholars even suggest that the purpose of the Great Flood was not just to punish sin, but to eliminate the contaminated bloodline of the Nephilim from humanity. This might explain why Noah was chosen. He is described as righteous and blameless in his generation, Genesis 6-9. Some scholars interpret this as referring not only to Noah's moral character, but also to his genetic purity. He did not carry Nephilim blood. Whatever the exact reason, God decided to send a flood to wipe out all life on earth, except for Noah, his family, and the animals he brought on the ark. This was a painful but necessary decision to save God's plan for humanity. The Great Flood is not just a story about punishment, it's also a story about salvation. While most of humanity was wiped out, God still preserved a small portion, Noah and his family, to start anew. This is a pattern we see repeated throughout the Bible. God punishes sin, but always preserves a remnant to continue his plan. This leads us to a deeper reflection on the meaning of the Nephilim and Great Flood story. This is not just a historical story about strange creatures and a great flood. It's also a story about the consequences of crossing divine boundaries, about the danger of pride and uncontrolled power, and about how God deals with corruption and sin. The story of the Nephilim is also a warning for us today. In the age of advanced technology and developing science, we are pushing the boundaries of what humans can do. From gene editing to artificial intelligence, we are creating and controlling things that previously belonged only to the realm of God. The story of the Nephilim reminds us that not everything we can do is what we should do. It also reminds us that God is supreme, and he will not allow sin and rebellion to continue forever. Just as he intervened in Noah's time, he will intervene again to end sin and establish justice. But there is an important difference. While the Great Flood was an act of judgment, God promised that he would never destroy the world by flood again, Genesis 9:11. Instead, he has provided another way to deal with sin, through the sacrifice of his Son, Jesus Christ. While the Great Flood wiped out sin by wiping out sinners, Jesus took our sins upon himself on the cross, so that we could be forgiven and born again. This is a better solution, a solution that deals not only with the consequences of sin, but also with its root cause. As we look back at the story of the Nephilim and the Great Flood, we see a picture of God's justice and mercy. We see a God who cannot tolerate sin, but also a God who doesn't want to abandon his creation. We see a God willing to start over, willing to continue working with humanity despite our continual failures. And that is a message of hope. No matter how far we have fallen, no matter what we have done, God is still willing to redeem us. Just as he saved Noah from the floodwaters, he is ready to save us from our own sins. After exploring the origins, characteristics, and role of the Nephilim in the Great Flood, the big question remains, is there any evidence of their existence beyond ancient texts? What traces of this hybrid race between angels and humans might still remain on Earth? Let's begin with the most controversial archaeological discoveries, giant skeletons reportedly found around the world. From the 19th to early 20th century, many reports of finding human skeletons of enormous size appeared, especially in North America. In 1912, the New York Times reported the discovery of a skeleton nearly 4 meters tall in Wisconsin. In 1891, the Arizona Gazette reported finding a 2.7-meter-tall human skeleton near Crittenden, Arizona. Similar discoveries were also recorded in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and many other states in the USA. Notably, many of these skeletons were found in Native American mounds, suggesting that these giants may have existed in prehistoric America. Many Native American tribes have legends about giants who once lived on their lands, describing them as violent beings who frequently waged war against the tribes. But what happened to these skeletons? This is where the story becomes controversial. Many believe that organizations like the Smithsonian collected these skeletons and then concealed them from the public. They argue that acknowledging the existence of giants would shake the foundations of evolutionary theory and force scientists to reconsider our understanding of human history. However, the Smithsonian and mainstream scientific community firmly deny these accusations. They claim that reports of giants resulted from misidentification of animal bones, hoaxes, or simply journalistic exaggeration. They point out that there is no reliable scientific evidence for the existence of humans whose size far exceeds the biological limits of our species. But if there's no skeletal evidence, what about ancient architectural works? Around the world, there are massive architectural structures that, even with modern technology, we still find difficult to explain how they were built. From the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, the Temple of Baalbek in Lebanon, to the giant statues on Easter Island, all contain mysteries about how ancient humans could move and stack stones weighing tens, even hundreds of tons. At Baalbek, Lebanon, there are stones weighing more than 800 tons placed with millimeter precision. How could ancient people, with primitive technology, quarry, transport, and place these massive stones? Some believe this could be the legacy of the Nephilim, beings with strength far exceeding normal humans. Similarly, the Great Pyramid of Giza was built with amazing precision. Stone blocks averaging 2.5 tons were cut and placed with accuracy that even with modern technology, we would find difficult to replicate. How could ancient Egyptians accomplish this? Could they have received help from beings with superior knowledge and strength? Not just architectural works, but there are also ancient artifacts and technologies that seem too advanced for their time. From the Baghdad battery, a device that may have been used to generate electricity over 2,000 years ago, to the Antikythera mechanism, a complex astronomical computer from the 2nd century BCE, to ancient maps, showing geographical details that should not have been known at that time. These artifacts suggest that there may have been an advanced civilization existing in the distant past, a civilization with knowledge and technology far beyond what we think was possible for that era. Could this be the legacy of the Nephilim, beings who inherited angelic knowledge from their fathers? Beyond physical evidence, we can also find traces of the Nephilim in art and culture around the world. Almost every culture has legends about giants or hybrid beings between gods and humans. In Greek mythology, we have the Titans, giant beings who ruled the world before the Olympian gods. We also have demigods, children of gods and mortals, like Hercules, Perseus, and many other heroes. In Norse mythology, we have the Jotnar, often translated as giants, beings who lived before the gods and frequently conflicted with them. In Sumerian mythology, we have the Anunnaki, beings who came down from heaven and created humans. We also have Gilgamesh, described as 2/3 god and 1/3 human. In Maya and Aztec cultures, we have giant gods who created the world and humanity. These similarities raise the question, do all these legends share a common origin? Do they reflect a collective memory of the Nephilim, hybrid beings between angels and humans who once lived on Earth? Interestingly, many cultures also have legends about a great flood that wiped out most of humanity, leaving only a few survivors. From the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, to the Greek legend of Deucalion and Pyrrha, to the Chinese legend of Nuwa, all describe a terrible flood that swept away the ancient world. Could these be different versions of the same event, the Great Flood described in the Bible? In modern times, interest in the Nephilim remains undiminished. From television shows like Ancient Aliens to countless books and websites on the subject, many continue to search for evidence of their existence. Some researchers have gone further, connecting the Nephilim with UFO phenomena and aliens. They suggest that what we call aliens today might actually be Nephilim or their descendants, returning to Earth after thousands of years of absence. Others have sought evidence of the Nephilim in human DNA. They point to anomalies in our genome, such as junk DNA, parts of the genome that seem to have no clear function. They suggest this could be the legacy of hybridization between angels and humans. However, mainstream science remains skeptical of these theories. They point out that there is no reliable scientific evidence for the existence of the Nephilim, and that phenomena claimed as evidence can be explained by conventional scientific theories. But does this mean the Nephilim didn't exist? Not necessarily. As we've seen, there is much indirect evidence suggesting that an unusual species may have existed in the distant past. And if the Bible and other ancient texts are accurate, then the Nephilim were not just legend, they were an important part of human history. A part that was wiped out in the Great Flood but still left an indelible mark on our collective memory. As we look back at all this evidence and these relics, we must ask ourselves, did the Nephilim really exist? And if so, what does that mean for our understanding of human history, of the relationship between heaven and earth, and of God's plan for his creation? These are not just academic questions. They have profound implications for our beliefs and worldview. If the Nephilim did exist, then the boundary between heaven and earth, between natural and supernatural, may be thinner than we think. And if God once wiped out most of humanity because of sin and corruption, then that reminds us of the importance of living a righteous life that pleases him. In the next section, we will explore how the Nephilim are portrayed in modern culture and the lessons we can learn from their story. We will look at the significance of this story for today's world and how it can help us better understand the relationship between God and his creation. From ancient pages to modern widescreens, the image of the Nephilim, hybrid beings between angels and humans, continues to haunt our imagination. Though thousands of years have passed since they were wiped out in the Great Flood, their appeal has not diminished. On the contrary, in the digital age and mass media, the Nephilim have become an integral part of popular culture, appearing in films, books, video games, and even music. Let's look at how the Nephilim are portrayed in modern cinema and television. From films like Darren Aronofsky's Noah, where Nephilim are depicted as giant creatures made of stone, to television series like Supernatural, where they are portrayed as fallen angels capable of reproducing with humans. Each work has its own interpretation of these mysterious beings, but all share a common point. They are powerful, mysterious, and often frightening creatures. In modern literature, Nephilim also appear in countless works, from horror novels to science fiction. Lauren Kate's Fallen series tells the story of a fallen angel who loves an earthly girl, while Cassandra Clare's The Mortal Instruments introduces a world where children of angels and humans, called Nephilim, fight to protect humanity from demonic forces. These works not only entertain but also evoke profound questions about the nature of good and evil, about the boundary between heaven and earth, and about the consequences of crossing divine boundaries. In the world of video games, Nephilim are also a popular theme. From the Diablo series, where players fight against the forces of hell, to Devil May Cry, where the main character is a hybrid between angel and demon. These games allow players to explore worlds where the supernatural and natural intersect, where creatures like Nephilim are not just legends but part of reality. But the presence of Nephilim in popular culture doesn't stop at entertainment. They have also become part of modern conspiracy theories and new religious beliefs. Many believe that Nephilim still exist today, or at least their bloodline still flows in some powerful lineages. They suggest that royal families, political leaders, and even entertainment stars could be descendants of Nephilim, carrying within them the blood of fallen angels. These conspiracy theories often connect Nephilim with secret organizations like the Illuminati, Freemasons, and other elite groups believed to be secretly controlling the world. They claim that these organizations were founded and led by descendants of Nephilim, who use their power and influence to manipulate global events according to their will. Another popular conspiracy theory connects Nephilim with UFO phenomena and aliens. They suggest that what we call aliens are actually Nephilim or their descendants, returning to Earth after thousands of years of absence. They claim that alien abductions and hybridization experiments are efforts by Nephilim to create a new hybrid race, just as their ancestors did in the pre-flood era. Although these conspiracy theories lack scientific evidence, they still attract a large number of believers. This reflects the continued fascination of Nephilim and their ability to stimulate our imagination. It also shows humanity's need to find explanations for the mysteries of the world, for events that science has not yet fully explained. In the religious realm, Nephilim have also become a controversial topic. Some religious groups believe that the return of Nephilim will be a sign of the end times, part of the apocalyptic plan described in the Bible. They cite Jesus' words in Matthew 24-37. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. They interpret this to mean that before Jesus returns, the world will become like the pre-flood era, a time when Nephilim walked the earth. Others believe that Nephilim have returned in the form of modern technologies like artificial intelligence, gene editing, and human enhancement technologies. They warn that efforts to exceed the natural limits of humans, to become like gods, could lead to corruption similar to the Nephilim era and may cause similar judgment. These interpretations, though seemingly extreme, still highlight an important point. The story of Nephilim is not just a historical story. It is also a warning about the consequences of crossing divine boundaries, about the danger of pride and uncontrolled power. It reminds us that not everything we can do is what we should do. In the age of advanced technology and developing science, we are pushing the boundaries of what humans can do. From gene editing to artificial intelligence, from nanotechnology to virtual reality, we are creating and controlling things that previously belonged only to the realm of God. We are trying to exceed our natural limits, to become stronger, smarter, and even immortal. But the story of Nephilim reminds us that pride comes before a fall. It warns us about the consequences of trying to become like gods, about the risk of using knowledge and power without wisdom and ethical responsibility. It reminds us that we are not God, and that there are boundaries we should not cross. At the same time, the story of Nephilim is also a reminder of God's mercy and grace. Although he punished sin through the Great Flood, he still saved Noah and his family, allowing humanity to have a fresh start. And although he may punish our sins today, he has provided a path of salvation through his Son, Jesus Christ. When we look at the presence of Nephilim in modern culture, we see a reflection of ourselves, of our hopes and fears, of our desires and concerns. We see the allure of power and the risk of pride. We see the attraction of the forbidden and the consequences of crossing divine boundaries. But we also see a deep longing for something beyond this material world, for a connection with the divine, for a purpose and meaning beyond our daily existence. We see an acknowledgement that there is more to this world than what the naked eye can see, that there are forces and realities beyond our understanding. And perhaps that's why the story of Nephilim continues to attract us, why it continues to haunt our imagination. Because it tells us about a world where heaven and earth intersect, where the divine and human meet, where the impossible becomes possible. It tells us about a world larger, more wonderful, and more frightening than the world we know. And in an age of materialism and skepticism, that's a message many long to hear. As we have explored the origins, characteristics, role in the Great Flood, and evidence of the Nephilim's existence, let us now contemplate the profound lessons this story brings to us today. The story of the Nephilim is not just a distant historical page, but a mirror reflecting human nature, divine boundaries, and the consequences of crossing those boundaries. In our era, the age of advanced technology, gene editing, artificial intelligence, the lessons from the time of Nephilim become more urgent than ever before. Let us reflect on the first lesson, the consequences of crossing natural boundaries. When the sons of God united with the daughters of men, they broke a divine boundary, the boundary between heaven and earth. The result was a hybrid race, not part of God's original plan, a race whose presence led to the corruption and destruction of the ancient world. In our age, we are also pushing the boundaries of what humans can do. We are editing DNA, creating artificial intelligence capable of self-learning and self-development, even researching ways to extend human lifespan to near immortality. But the question arises, are we crossing boundaries that we should not cross? Are we repeating the mistakes of the Nephilim era? As one theologian once said, not everything we can do is what we should do. Ability doesn't always equate to authority. Just because we can create something doesn't mean we should do it. This is a lesson the Nephilim story teaches us, a lesson about humility and respecting divine boundaries. The second lesson relates to the dangers of pride and power. The Nephilim, with their superior strength and intelligence, became oppressors, using their abilities not to elevate humanity but to satisfy their own desires and ambitions. They taught humans skills and knowledge they weren't ready to grasp, leading to abuse and chaos. In the modern world, we also witness the dangers of unchecked power. From large technology companies collecting our personal data, to governments developing weapons of mass destruction, to individuals using social media to spread misinformation, all are examples of how power can be abused when not accompanied by ethics and responsibility. The Bible teaches us that pride comes before destruction, Proverbs 16:18. This is a lesson the Nephilim learned the hard way, and it's a lesson we need to remember as well. Power without responsibility leads to destruction. The third lesson from the Nephilim story relates to justice and mercy in God's plan. Although God punished sin through the great flood, he still saved Noah and his family, allowing humanity to have a fresh start. This is a pattern we see repeated throughout the Bible. God punishes sin but always preserves a remnant to continue his plan. This reminds us that God is just, but also full of mercy. He cannot tolerate sin, but he also doesn't want to abandon his creation. He is willing to start over, willing to continue working with humanity despite our continual failures. In today's world, as we face global challenges like climate change, inequality, and conflict, we need to remember that both justice and mercy are necessary. We need to face the consequences of our actions, but we also need hope and opportunity to change, to do better. As we apply these lessons to modern life, we must ask ourselves, how can we advance technologically and scientifically without crossing ethical boundaries? How can we use our power and influence responsibly? How can we balance justice and mercy in how we treat each other and the natural world? The story of the Nephilim also raises profound questions about our nature and our relationship with the divine. Could Nephilim exist in our time? Not literally, but perhaps in a deeper sense. Are we creating modern Nephilim through crossing ethical and natural boundaries? As we develop artificial intelligence capable of surpassing human intelligence, as we edit genes to create desired traits, as we seek to extend lifespan and even achieve a form of immortality, are we repeating the mistakes of the past? Are we creating a new generation of beings not part of God's original plan? These are not easy questions to answer, and perhaps there are no simple answers. But it's important that we ask these questions, that we reflect on them, and that we seek guidance from the lessons of the past. Finally, the story of the Nephilim reminds us of our responsibility with knowledge and power. We have been given intelligence, creativity, and the ability to develop and progress. But with these gifts comes responsibility, the responsibility to use them wisely, ethically, and in accordance with God's plan for humanity. As Jesus taught, from everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. Luke 12:48. We have been entrusted with so much knowledge, technology, power, and we will be held accountable for how we use these gifts. In the age of information and technology, when the boundaries between humans and machines, between natural and artificial, are increasingly blurred, the lessons from the Nephilim story become more important than ever. We need wisdom to know when to advance and when to stop, humility to recognize our limits, and courage to stand firm against the pressure of progress at any cost. As we reflect on the role of faith in understanding the past, we realize that faith is not the enemy of progress, but a necessary companion. Faith provides us with an ethical framework, a sense of purpose, and a humility before the mystery of the universe and its creator. In an increasingly complex and rapidly changing world, we need these anchors more than ever. We need to remember that we are not just physical beings, but also spiritual beings, created in God's image and called to live a life reflecting his love, justice, and mercy. The story of the Nephilim, with all its mystery and strangeness, is ultimately a story about humans, about our aspirations, our fall, and our potential for redemption. It reminds us that we can do great things but also cause great harm. It challenges us to use our abilities not to satisfy personal ambition, but to serve the common good and honor the one who created us. As we move into the future with all its challenges and opportunities, let the story of the Nephilim be a reminder of where we have been and where we could go if we don't learn from the lessons of the past. Let it be a call to live a purposeful, ethical life that aligns with God's plan for humanity. And above all, let it be a reminder that no matter how far we have fallen, no matter what we have done, God is still willing to redeem us. Just as he saved Noah from the floodwaters, he is ready to save us from our own sins and give us a fresh start. The journey of discovery about the Nephilim, hybrid beings between angels and humans, has taken us from ancient pages to archaeological evidence, From ancient legends to modern culture, from the corruption of the pre-flood world to lessons for our age. Now, as we conclude this journey, let's look back at what we've learned and the profound significance of this story for our lives. Nephilim appeared at a special moment in human history, when the boundary between heaven and earth was blurred, when sons of God united with daughters of men. They were extraordinary beings with superior strength, size, and intelligence, but their presence contributed to the corruption of the pre-flood world, leading to God's decision to wipe out most of humanity through a terrible flood. The story of the Nephilim is not just a historical story, it is a warning about the consequences of crossing divine boundaries, about the danger of pride and uncontrolled power. It reminds us that not everything we can do is what we should do. In the age of advanced technology and developing science, when we are pushing the boundaries of what humans can do, from gene editing to artificial intelligence, this lesson becomes more urgent than ever. But the story of the Nephilim is also a story of hope and redemption. Although God punished sin through the Great Flood, He still saved Noah and his family, allowing humanity to have a fresh start. This reminds us that God is just, but also full of mercy. He cannot tolerate sin, but He also doesn't want to abandon His and relics that the Nephilim may have left behind, from giant skeletons reportedly discovered creation. As we look at the evidence around the world, to unexplainable ancient architectural works, to legends about gods and heroes in various cultures, we see that their story has left an indelible mark on human history and culture. And as we explore how Nephilim are portrayed in modern culture, from films and books to video games and music, we see that their appeal has not diminished. They continue to stimulate our imagination, evoking profound questions about the nature of good and evil, about the boundary between heaven and earth, and about the consequences of crossing divine boundaries. But perhaps the most important lesson from the story of the Nephilim is about our responsibility with knowledge and power. We have been given intelligence, creativity, and the ability to develop and progress. But with these gifts comes responsibility, the responsibility to use them wisely, ethically, and in accordance with God's plan for humanity. In the age of information and technology, when the boundaries between humans and machines, between natural and artificial, are increasingly blurred, the lessons from the story of Nephilim become more important than ever. We need wisdom to know when to advance and when to stop, humility to recognize our limits, and courage to stand firm against the pressure of progress at any cost. As we conclude this journey, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on. Could Nephilim exist in our time? Not literally, but perhaps in a deeper sense. Are we creating modern Nephilim through crossing ethical and natural boundaries? And if so, are we repeating the mistakes of the past? And above all, let the story of the Nephilim be a reminder that no matter how far we have fallen, no matter what we have done, God is still willing to redeem us. Just as He saved Noah from the floodwaters, He is ready to save us from our own sins and give us a fresh start. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery about the Nephilim, hybrid beings between angels and humans, and their role in the Great Flood event. If you found this video helpful and want to learn more about similar topics, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content. And don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts about the Nephilim. Do you believe in their existence? Who do you think they were, and why did they appear on Earth? Share your thoughts, and let's continue this conversation together. See you in the next video, as we continue to explore the greatest mysteries of human history and their significance for our lives today. Until then, live a purposeful, ethical life that aligns with God's plan for humanity. Peace and blessings to you.